Well, that's really interesting. It's the question I address in the introduction. Why is there a need to do this? Because in the newspapers, you've heard about WikiLeaks and several other publications over a number of years. So what possibly more can a book add? Well, the press, newspapers and so on, tend to just have a very minute focus, sometimes politically biased, but just, it's like swatting little flies. And what we want to understand is the general relationships between the United States and other countries and how other countries work together.
So does this reflect a sense of your frustration that WikiLeaks haven't been entirely appreciated yet?
Well, in the academic sphere, something really interesting has happened. So if you look at the papers being published in Spanish or in the Asian languages or in the Slavic languages, there's about 30,000 references to WikiLeaks in court papers, in the ECHR, and in technical papers. But in the field of foreign relations, there isn't in English, and that's a real mystery. It's a mystery that I investigate and solve in the book. It is, in fact, direct censorship admitted by the editors of the most prestigious foreign relations journal, ISQ, because they're worried about the legal risks of citing cables.
But isn't the problem here that the book is a collection of sort of WikiLeaks' greatest hits? But if you ask people out in the street about WikiLeaks, they don't think of the 2.3 million cables. They may not read this book. What they think of is you.
Well, I don't know where you get those figures from. Actually, we did polling in the United States. WikiLeaks name recognition is 7 times my name recognition. So that's simply not true. For the WikiLeaks itself, we've published now more than 10 times the number of cables as Cablegate, 2.7 million cables and 10 million other documents in total. So it's really something that's hard for single journalists to get their minds around in a story. You need a book. Geopolitics is a serious, complex issue, so you need a book-length format to be able to tackle it.
What critics say about this book is that many of the writers that you have who have written about Russia and Turkey and such like, they all come with an agenda of their own. Many of them have written very critically about the United States. They're critical of Israel. So they're seeing things through another prism.
Well, they are, professors and quite well-regarded journalists with long histories. It is true that they are people that are willing to take a critical eye to the United States. Now, that's something interesting. If you look at foreign relations academics in the United States, generally speaking, they're not willing to take that critical eye because they're close to the State Department, training students for the State Department or connected to it in another way. So, interestingly, there's a limited number of people who have the knowledge of what the United States has been up to, or regional knowledge about foreign relations, and who are in a position where they can write honestly about a subject.
But isn't it just possible as well that they don't see the conspiracies that maybe you see or some of these writers see?
Well, this word conspiracy, I'm not sure why you're using it, is a word that's used to undermine people. But these are, professors of Asian studies and so on. These are serious people, and I think this is a serious book.
But wouldn't it have been better to have got people of a more independent disposition to have written about WikiLeaks?
Well, I got some of the people, and Verso, the publisher, got them as well. I think there's quite a good range of people. Interestingly, they're mostly Americans. They're not Russians or even Latin Americans, but they write about those subjects from a critical American perspective, but also in relation to the UK.
WikiLeaks, just coming back to that earlier question, don't you worry that this gets in the way of the book, gets in the way of the message, gets in the way of the cut-through that you're seeking for WikiLeaks? This whole business around you, the Ecuadorean Embassy.
It does sometimes, that is true, and it is a concern sometimes. On the other hand, sometimes it can be used to draw attention to issues that we want attention drawn to. And sometimes there's overlaps, and the overlaps are fascinating. For example, the overlaps with Latin America and the overlaps here with the United Kingdom. I just want to quote to you our section on Europe, which is one of the strongest sections in the book, on Cameron and Haig and George Osborne. This is a direct quote from one of our cables. It's reported by the US ambassador writing back to Washington. Haig said he, David Cameron, and George Osborne were children of Thatcher and staunch Atlanticists. America is the essential country. Haig said whoever enters 10 Downing Street as Prime Minister soon learns of the essential nature of the relationship with America. We want a pro-American regime. We need it. The world needs it. So this just incredible sucking up by William Hague, embarrassing, shameful. But those are the people, those transatlanticists are the people running Downing Street right now.
Mr. Assange, would you have done anything differently over the last 3 years?
Sure, thousands of little things. But in terms of the big things, it's quite hard to see what difference there could be.
Go to America, face your critics.
It's interesting. It's a bit like foreign relations to a degree. You often wonder how much of everything is a forced move on politicians, that they simply had no other choice, and how much could they simply decide to act in a slightly different manner? Did they make conceptual mistakes, or were there multiple options that they didn't choose? That's a very interesting question that I've dealt with for, I suppose, 10 years now, and we see foreign relations specialists dealing with all the time.
Mr. Assange, thank you.
Thank you very much.